Okay, guys. Um, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lewis. Obviously, image in the bottom left. Um, I'm actually Mayfair Ventures on Tradingview. Um, I obviously don't do many direct YouTube streams until recently. I've had a few issues with Tradingview in terms of saving the content that I've put out. So I tend to record the stream on Tradingview and then upload later to YouTube. So until those issues are resolved, I'll kind of try to switch between the two. And obviously, this particular stream is very specific to YouTube rather than TradingView. So the reason I wanted to share this and obviously give you a bit of a feel of who I am, what I'm doing, and obviously what we do in our Discord server, the kind of educational content that we teach. Um, I suppose the longs and shorts of it is I've been trading 21 years now this year. My business partner, Paul, he's actually been a trader for 30 odd years. And together, we actually created the Discord server specifically to train what we regard as level two traders, guys that obviously have decent experience, but are looking for that kind of professional edge. So ultimately, what we do is go into some depth on some more of the advanced techniques. And one of the areas of interest is Wyckoff. Another category that we put a lot of emphasis on, but not really in depth, is Elliott waves. And it's then the kind of combination with a couple of extra tricks and tools. We have some proprietary instruments and indicators and so on. So I just wanted to give, like I said, a bit of an overview before jumping into the charts. Now, again, one of the reasons I don't tend to use the camera, you'll see Paul's face on many of his streams. I'm living out in the French countryside. I get low bandwidth kind of at the best. I've got satellite internet. I've got a Nighthawk internet connection. I've got Orange broadband. I've got a couple of others, 4G connection, 5G connection, and yeah, we're literally so far out in the middle of nowhere. It's not even funny. So I tried to lower the bandwidth specifically for these kinds of videos. It's more to do with the educational content rather than obviously the video itself. So obviously what I'll do is I'll jump straight into the charts. But before I do that, what I want to do is cover some of the other posts that I've put out over the last couple of months, really, just to give a flavour of what I've actually been looking at, what I'm monitoring myself. I'm actually a longer term trader. I look at things from kind of daily upwards rather than daily downwards. So I guess overall, I'm probably more an investor rather than your average day trader. So what I'll do is I'll start off with these. I'll just hide this a second and I'll jump into first I'll cover some education as well in terms of what we have. Like I said, if you don't know me from TradingView, my profile is Mayfair Ventures. Obviously, put out a lot of free educational content as well as, like I said, what we do in Discord. But to start with, I guess the whole Discord server was actually based on and around this particular move. I was probably one of the first bearish calls, I guess, on Bitcoin. You'll see this going back to March the 18th. I was expecting, obviously, a move down from this, what I had as a 3. My assumption was that the 3 was already in. So, like I said earlier, when I look at Elliott waves, I kind of simplify it. I'm not looking for the triangles and the zigzags and the flats. I'm not looking for the ins and outs of every single move. And although they fractal, I just really brush over it, kind of just to give me a feeling of where they were. So obviously on the assumption that we were at a 3, my assumption was we were down to 4. So a 3 to 4 move down is what I was aiming for. And overall, I was looking for some kind of move like this. A little bit of sideways action, which is why I've dragged it out, obviously, to the E. But anyway, the idea was dropping down to A, up to B, obviously retesting the high, and then obviously dropping back down C, D, and eventually down to E. So what I'll do is I'll play this out. Obviously, you can see this within the profile. Um, going back to where we were. Um, the idea, like I said, A. Now, what we had with B was we had a new high created, which in Wyckoff terms, this would have been the UTAD before obviously that distribution moving on down. So in theory, from A to B, I think it was around $2,000. This was then offset with the view of C being obviously 2,000 at more. So you'll see the distance there is probably comparable to the distance here. And therefore, the move itself, not exactly as I would have liked, but obviously down to the final destination as planned and across, obviously, as I said, with E. So we're under the assumption that we're still bearish at the moment. We're now obviously in August. This was ultimately in March, look from the call, and therefore it's kind of doing what we thought it would be doing throughout all this period of time. So, fingers crossed, we might get a nice little move now or some kind of confirmation to the bullish side. But at the moment, pure Bitcoin still pretty bearish until that confirmation is set in. So, anyway, we cover this on daily streams, both in Tradingview and now obviously with the uploads into YouTube. So this is just one example of what I wanted to show. Now, the real, I suppose, kind of juicy stuff really was I'm actually more a Forex trader rather than a crypto trader. Although I've been in Bitcoin since 2011, um, it's actually Forex that I'm kind of more interested in personally. So obviously marking these up going back April. Now, again, I'm not going to go into too much depth in terms of our strategy, but the longs and shorts of it is, we really like to trade the four, move the five, which, even in basic terms in Elliott, the impulsive moves are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And obviously I'm looking for the corrective move 3 to 4 to complete, giving me confirmation to take a move down in this particular instance. So starting off with USD Swiss franc, you can see obviously from April 11th, larger time frames, obviously this being the month. I was actually looking for 4, obviously as the move, and then obviously this push down starting. So for me, on a weekly time frame right now, I'd be looking for this move potentially being the first one, a pullback 2, which you might actually see more on a daily time frame. And therefore I can kind of see that I'm looking for some weakness in the US dollar to continue, giving us obviously a push down on this Swiss franc pair. So I think, like I said, the idea for this particular video was just to cover some of these things first before diving into any form of chart, just to give you a feel of what I'm looking at and kind of why this particular pair. This is New Zealand dollar, US dollar. I've been following this on the weekly time frame, as you can see up here again, back April the 11th. The assumption there was 3 to 4, but as you can see, 4 obviously not quite complete. So I would have liked to have seen a deeper dive just below this level here for the 4, potentially creating some kind of double bottom, and then obviously, um, moving on up from here. So again, on the assumption that the dollar becomes weaker over the next couple of weeks, then I'd like to see well, actually another push down, I think, at the moment in terms of where the DXY is sitting. But I'd like to see now the 0 to 1 impulsive move go up, obviously pull back 2, and then at that particular point, I'll be looking to take this one along for the next couple of months. Um, Going into what else we got next? So going into USD JPY. Um, Similar situation. I think obviously 3 to 4 is the assumption here. I think, like I said, I am looking for that DXY weakness. You can see from this, we've got a false bar, which makes me think, we might get another little high, very similar to the Bitcoin move. And then obviously down to 4 is what I'm looking for. So, ultimately we've come down. This potentially could be a 4, giving us obviously a 0 to 1 back down for 2. So all of a sudden this USD JPY move is actually a little bit further ahead in my expectations than where we are with things like the New Zealand dollar. So obviously something that I'll be looking at this one a little bit closer over the next couple of days. Like I said, once we get into this DXY, and I'll keep referring to DXY, and I'll come across as to what I've actually been waiting for on DXY. We then have Euro USD. Obviously, this is quite a popular pair. So in Euro USD term, again, very similar. 1, 2, 3. Most of these moves are currently at a 4 for a very specific reason. So if we go back in time and we look at the March value areas, March 2020, obviously COVID, we actually got to these particular levels all at the same time. And the way that I refer to this within the group is, think of it like an airport or a train station. Everything reached the destination pretty much the same time. and all the flights and trains and actually leaving, departing this obviously value area low slash high, depending on the pair, at the same time. So we're not going to have much divergence at the moment in terms of price action. So again, what I'd like to see with this one, obviously 3 to 4 back 11th of April. Again, I think these were all roughly on the same kind of time frame. And then obviously for me, again, possibly seeing a one move up, a pullback two, which is very deep. I'd like to see another little test of this before I continue on up. So I think we're getting ready now to load up on the buys, which is obviously a USD sell-off, as we start moving on up. So what else do we have? We then have GBP USD. This is again on the monthly plot. So I've actually got a little note in this one. And obviously as Tradingview, you can't edit this. So you'll see that this has been live since April the 11th. The general idea was again comparable value area, around obviously March 2020. Therefore, a new move on up, one pullback to 3, 4, and obviously expectation up to 5. Now, this particular one again, I think, for me, I'd like to see a little bit of a deeper 4 before a move on up, but I'm not sure where we are in terms of the pound. So personally, I'd like to see this a little bit deeper, although we could argue this being easily a smaller daily move up and a pullback down. I'd have to evaluate this as a position, but clearly, I'm not comfortable with this as I put in here. I'm not a fan of this particular one, in terms of where we are. So I'd like to see us on a smaller time frame, being the daily, to get some additional confirmation. So I'm going to leave this one for now, in obviously my trade setups. We then have Euro JPY. Again, similar position going back obviously from March. 1, 2, 3, 4. So obviously I'd like to see this drop down for 4, but we do have quite a substantial false bar, which again makes me think we might get a little bit of a dart up before the push down. And that push down, I'll be looking to take this long after the 0 to 1 move pullback 2. So on this one, we've obviously had 3 now moving up, as I just said. This is more likely to be the 4. So clearly 3 moves across here, down to a 4, and then up obviously from here. So expectations on this now. And I'll cover this when I'll go into the charts on some of these. So Euro JPY, I'd be expecting this now to look pretty much the opposite of this, giving us a oversold situation on the weekly time frame, and now starting to look for moves on up. So obviously they're the current moves that I've been kind of watching myself. And although we've done a lot of streams around crypto and Bitcoin in particular, this is obviously something that, I'm keen to obviously explore a bit further, because it's actually the Forex pairs. It's actually more exciting for me personally. So what did I say? I'll go into Euro JPY, obviously on a weekly time frame, and as I just said, I think realistically we are now down and out of this. I would like to see obviously a move. I don't think this is the 3. I think obviously, judging by what we've just seen, I think that move was more likely the 3 to 4 to 5 on the smaller time frame. So I think for me this would be the 3 weekly rather than the 5. Actually, let me just make a little note of this right now. So I think this would be the 3 weekly, an ugly 3, and therefore 3 giving us an A, a B, and a C move. Obviously, on the current move down, giving us the 4 weekly, and then like I said, I'll be looking to take this long once we get the first move up, pull back, and go again. That's my expectations on this particular pair. So yeah, that's really where we are, in terms of the Forex pairs. I think Australian dollar, US dollar is one that I'm really looking forward to trading. This one I've marked up obviously a little bit more. I can actually see, again, similar situation. We're now down into the oversold situation. So I'd like to see obviously a move on up on the weekly, dropping down to the daily time frame. We've obviously got a slightly inverse situation here. and the fact that we have a false bar along the bottom would make me feel that we're more likely to get another couple of tests along this bottom. I'd like to see it dip down into this level if I'm completely truthful. And therefore, I think the daily down before obviously this move up again. So I think everything right now for me personally is hinging on the DXY, which is obviously the dollar move. And in dollar terms, my business partner Paul has put a couple of streams up recently and a couple of decent posts on the current situation, and I think we share this as an opinion. So I'd like to see another test around this area, taking out some of the liquidity here in this little region, and then obviously the move on down. I've marked 3, 4, 5 sideways. There's no particular level, so ignore those in terms of the price. Don't think I'm taking this down to 90. The general idea is that I'm expecting this kind of move. Obviously, after we see the daily move up, I'd like to see a weekly move down. So obviously the inverse there, which is giving me this. So this is the kind of logic that I'm looking at, guys. This is obviously what we cover in the Discord channel. And like I said, I'm trying to do this specifically for YouTube for this particular video. But obviously we'll be covering a little bit of this as well in the Tradingview streams over the next couple of days. So just touch on Bitcoin to finish off with. I think for me, again, the bias is still pretty much bearish. I've actually marked this, if I come back into some smaller time frames, I marked this up for the channel earlier on today. So let's go back to the old levels that I've put in. So the current expectation for me at the moment on this is we had a couple of key levels of interest on the move up. I think I'd like to see some pullback down to these kind of regions. I know somebody in the group had shared a Kingfisher map. I know there's been talk about the book map software as well. And again, just kind of justifying some of these levels. So again, an area of interest around here for me, and again around here, there's clearly some consolidation in and around this level. So although this might seem very impulsive and a $10,000 move you'd assume being impulsive, but I think the reality is when you actually zoom out a little bit, and again I've covered this in some of the streams using the Weiss logic, and how I've actually ended some of these streams just with a bit of food for thought really. If we take this drop down, obviously the first drop down to around 30k, and then the overall pullback, I'm just going to draw this rectangle out. And what you'll actually find, let's just go down to the bottom here. What you'll actually find is that we're still pretty much in the same position overall. Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll just go back to one of my other posts on this. So what I'll do is I'll have to come back into the other window and hide this chart a second. And what you'll actually see was some logic as to why I think this move was again going to be drawn out. So you can clearly see from the post on March the 18th with the blew up the rocket post, why the logic for 30k was there. Now, in Elliott terms, like I said, I really do simplify this. I'm not into all the patterns and the nitty gritties. So therefore, where we were at obviously that all-time high, again, ignore these levels. I've just drawn this freehand just to give you an idea. It's almost a street map in terms of where we are. So I was expecting obviously the move on down. I'd like to see a move up. And this move up would give me a monthly 3, weekly 5. Okay, so that's what I've been looking for there. Now, if you scroll down into this post, again, it's something you can't edit within Tradingview, so you'll see this going back, obviously, March the 26th. The expectation was, 3. I got a shallow and a deep formula. Again, something that we teach within Discord for obviously the expected kind of pullback. So if you look at this, and I'll come back into the chart in a second, you'll see where we are along this particular move, okay? So for me, seeing this move there and then stepping back into the current chart, I'll show you this now as an updated version, so I have to step out to at least the daily to make some sense of this. And this is why I don't feel overly bullish even after a $10,000 move up. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll take these off, I'll take this off on these couple of key levels. And what you'll see, my logic here is this for the weekly forecast, as obviously painted out back in March. We're actually doing nothing other than play out what was actually expected. So, like I said, overall, this doesn't look too impulsive. We're still in the sideways range where we are right now. I'm not going to call it any kind of distribution, although we've marked up potential accumulation and distribution ideas. This is something we share, and again, like I said, with subscribers in Discord. But the longs and shorts of this is the move is playing out exactly as we planned, going back all the way to March. We're still in this value area, this value range, and obviously we will be heading up for a monthly three. So weekly four, I'll do is I'll move this um, down, obviously, and around, and therefore 3 to 4, 5 being around this level. And again, I'm not really going to share much more of this for now. We're just going to play this out, and we've got some extension targets already in our sights for this one. So yeah, I think for now I'm going to leave this as we are. I hope you've enjoyed this one, although this has been a little bit more kind of to and fro in terms of the Forex and the crypto. It was just more an insight into who we are, what we're teaching, what we're trying to get out there in terms of the channel, and obviously what we do in Discord and in Tradingview. So if you don't follow us, obviously in Tradingview, come along and follow us and see the charts. And obviously, if you are on Discord, come join us. The link is obviously below. So yeah, have a great week, and we'll see you again in one of the next streams. Cheers.